Today we're working on the Rimac Concept 1. Now at the time of its build, it was the world's fastest all-electric hypercar. Right off the bat, if you're looking at it closely, you can see that there's some scratches, which is typical of a car of this nature, meaning it goes to car shows. It's the display car. Everybody wants to get in and get out. So the interior needs a little bit of work. It's a little grimy, but nothing terrible. And the outside needs a little bit of work. So it came here and we're gonna try to bring it up to that last 10%. And you're saying to yourself, why would you do that? Well, it's $1.6 million. For $1.6 million, it better look amazing. And we're gonna go over the steps on how to do that today on this episode of Drive and Protect. If you're unfamiliar as I was, the Rimac Concept 1 is an all-electric supercar manufactured in Croatia and sold in New York City through Manhattan Motor Cars. Now, I interviewed the chief test and development driver to understand more about how and why Rimac Automobilia Company went from just a hobby in a small garage to breaking world records in all-electric cars. Now, the full-length interview is on the studio channel, but for now, this is only in the shop for about 2 days before it heads out to another show, and the paint must be perfect when it's on display. As you can see, the paint not only has common swirls, but rids, short for random, isolated, deep scratches, and a few other remaining sanding marks that are causing our gloss meter to indicate that the paint isn't exactly where it needs to be. But first, we needed to clean the car completely. Now, if you think this is overkill, okay, you're probably right 99% of the time, especially on a vehicle in this condition. However, when you're working on a car that's over $1 million, spending extra 10, 15 minutes to reduce the risk of damage from contamination when, let's say, dirt or junk falls out of the seam, which is actually more common than you think, during or because of the vibration of the sanding and the polishing machines on the panels, is probably easier just to cover all your bases and clean it now. So you know the drill. Clean bucket, fresh water, filtered if possible, then 2 or 3 clean microfiber towels, and pick your favorite detergent for the job. In this case, because we're sanding, compounding, and then polishing later on, we used AMMO Brute as the soap for a little bit more bite. We did the same thing in the wheel bucket as well. First up is pre-rinsing the paint. Now trust me, this is not overkill. Pre-rinsing minimizes the workload on your soap or detergent by forcing or let's say blowing away the surface contamination and leaving the full power of your chosen soap to focus on the areas that require, let's say, more agitation and subsequently more lubrication. Likewise, during this phase, it gives you a preview of what type of protection is currently on the paint so that you can adjust your game plan during the leveling process later on. So in other words, you're not just throwing water on the car, you're using the pressure to blow out all the junk in the seams. You're looking at the water as it hits the paint, how does it react, those types of things. Next, we added Brute and Frothy to the power washer reservoir. Now, a few fellow detailers said to me that they used Frothy with water in the foam cannon as well as hoseless in the aerator, so I wanted to test this out for myself. It definitely creates thicker suds and more lubrication. Not sure if you need it all the time, but on a car like this, I'm not taking any chances. Be sure to use compressed air if you have it to blow out all the trapped seams and the crevices. Again, this is critical when you're trying to work clean, especially on super soft paint and when you're going after that last 10% like we are on this one. Check out the key, by the way. It's very cool, and it was actually a pretty heavy piece of aluminum. It was really nice. Under the hood, it's clearly missing an engine, but I thought it was cool that it came stock with KWs and tons of carbon fiber. Now the trunk contains the power plant. In this case, it's a battery with a total output of 913 kilowatts in roughly 1,224 horsepower, 0 to 60 in 2.5 seconds, and was claimed to be the fastest accelerating electric car in 2013. Next, my buddy Jason Rose from Rupes measures the paint from 2 angles, a 20 degree and 60 degree. But we're really focused on the haze, which is a good measurement of the quality and clarity of the finish based on us seeing a few deep sanding marks upon inspection. Okay, so here's the baseline for test number 1 on our gloss meter. As you can see, the 20 degree is 61.3, and this is a poor gloss reading. And down below is 42.8. This is the haze reading again, which is pretty bad. So the goal here is to have the highest gloss you can get and of course the lowest haze. In other words, there's lots of room for improvement here. For step number 1, to rectify this, we used P2000 cutting discs with a foam interface pad and the Rupes LRH75E to spot sand and level out the haze. To spot repair damage, in this case we have sanding marks and rids, spray a mist of water on these particular pads and spray a mist of water on the paint, then put the machine on speed 1, and the trick is to use light pressure and fast arm speed. With most of the heavy rids and leftover sanding marks removed, Jason used a blue cutting pad and blue compound to remove the sanding marks that we just put in with the P2000. So for measurement number 2, after the sanding and after the compounding, Jason remeasured the paint and the numbers looked much better. Up almost 20 points to about 80 for the gloss and down nearly 37 points to 5.9 for the haze reading. Now, the final polishing step is done with Uno Pure with a white foam pad prior to us coating the paint. First, prime the pad in an X pattern, then run the tool on speed 3 for a few seconds to prime the pad. The objective for priming your pad is to get the liquid to spread thin and even across the pad. Once done with priming, then reload 2 pea-sized dots and begin the polishing process. After the final polish, we tested with the gloss meter once again. This time we increased another 5 points on the gloss and reduced the haze by another 4 points. Anytime you get within, let's say, the mid-80s with the gloss meter, you're in pretty good shape.
Very good reading.
Jason also taped up the aluminum badge on the back of the car to avoid contamination sort of getting stuck or encompassed in the pad, causing finishing issues later on in the final step polishing because the aluminum is so soft. Now, for the rest of the car that just had swirls and love marks, but nothing crazy deep or sanding issues that we just addressed earlier, we're now using a yellow wool pad and yellow DA fine in our effort to leave as much paint on the car as possible. In other words, sanding the entire vehicle was just not necessary, nor would it be beneficial to the strength and integrity of the paint, so just don't do it if it doesn't need it. So with that, Jason worked on the larger areas while Dan and I worked with the smaller 3-inch sanding marks. Once all those rids were removed, I then focused on the larger panels while Jason worked the 1-inch nano and the super tight spots. To increase the gloss another 5 points as shown on the rear sanding marks and to be consistent with the rest of the car, we once again used the white pad and white polish on the larger areas. Afterwards, once the paint was now perfect, we protected it with AMMO Reflex Pro, and because we used Uno Pure, we didn't need to strip the paint, so Pro can work with it after a healthy buff off, which makes it sort of a quicker and more convenient application. As I've said in the past, if you can work with a partner when applying any protection, it makes it a way easier process. Obviously, one guy applies and the other removes, and you can move around the car pretty quickly. Once done with the coating, and certainly before it had any time to cure, which only increases its depth and shine, Jason then tested the paint once again, and we picked up another 4 points on the gloss and reduced the haze by 0.6. With that said, I don't necessarily think you should hang your hat on just the gloss meter. It's only one factor. Our eyes are a much stronger tool in evaluating the performance of a product. So with each step along the way, clearly we've increased the gloss and decreased the haze as we went from one step to the next. But I want to make a little bit of a caveat. The number one tool is, besides all the things that we have here, all the fancy stuff, is your eyes. Look at the paint. If it looks glossy, then you're successful. These tools only help give you a little bit of data to back up what you're seeing. So I really wanted to make that point because a lot of people, oh, gloss this increased gloss here, gloss, everything is gloss. But haze is actually a little bit more important, or a lot more important than gloss. If you decrease the haze, you're by default going to increase the gloss. So these are a few things to keep in mind. These are great, helpful tools, but at the end of the day, if you didn't have them, you'll be fine. Just look at the car. If it looks glossy, you're good to go. Since gloss meters are simply backups that confirm what your eyes are seeing, the bottom line is this. If you like the look of the product that you're using, then there you go. There's your answer. You can't make conclusions on instruments alone because you do get false positives and false negatives. If you want to totally nerd out, click the link above to hear the full-length discussion with Jason on why using a gloss meter to measure just one of the many factors that create beautiful paint isn't as definitive or final as you may have thought. Next, we cleaned up the grimy interior with an interior cleaner and brush that I cut down with scissors to get a bit more aggressive cleaning while still being safe. At the same time, Jason was polishing the carbon fiber with a 1 and 3-inch nano. For the dashboard area, even the nano couldn't fit because of the windshield, so I removed the pad and just did it by hand before applying Pro to all the interior areas that we just polished. Lastly, I vacuumed the floors and carpets, which were actually unusually soft and felt really nice to the touch, while Jason polished the front carbon fiber fan shroud with the nano, and the before and after was well worth it for sure. Finally, Dan cleaned the glass with Obey and a squeegee before we set up for the night photo shoot in the studio. The paint looked so wet with the lights on, and when they were off, it looked super silky smooth with just the purple LEDs. It was awesome. The following morning, the truck had to come and pick up the Rimac for the next show, and naturally it started to rain, and the driver didn't feel comfortable backing all the way up into the driveway, so out into the rain it went for its short trip back to New York City. Looks like I'm gonna need an indoor loading dock in my next building. As always, guys, thanks for watching, and please subscribe if you can.
Oh, baby, sorry. Oh. It's getting late in here. I cannot contort my body. You can't contort your body?